this video, we're going to talk about the Fulton line. The Fulton line is a Proto-Lance HO scale layout. It is a shelf layout, as you can see. It goes around the room here. We've talked about the size of the room, 9.5 feet, or 9 feet this way, 11.5 feet this way, with a helix so that we'll have access to both levels. There'll be staging on the bottom level. The first level, of course, is where the Fulton yard will be in this corner. We'll go over a track plan here in a minute. Then we'll go into a closet, which is going to house a 4-foot helix. That helix will then bring us up to a larger level, the second level, which will stick out a little farther, and that's where our main industries are going to be. The first level is really going to be, or the lower levels, really going to be mainly warehouse, and the main focal point will be the Fulton yard. But the Fulton Industrial, I think they called it the Fulco, or the Fulton County Railroad at one time. It was built in the mid to late 60s, I have found out. It has a total of 55 miles of track. There's several characteristics that I like about this whole idea. Number one, there's only access into the rail system through the Fulton line. So there's no dispatcher, there are no signals, there are no towns, there are no, that I know of, there's no signal crossings. There's a large road called Fulton Industrial. How brilliant is that? It's a 4-lane, has a grass median that the actual railroad goes under in a tunnel underneath that. So there's no rail crossings at all, other than a few spots. I say a few spots, several spots within the industrial area. That's, you know, the speed limit's 25 miles an hour, and they're going to have crew on the train that's going to block traffic if they need to, or, you know, whatever. So, and the trains are going to be short too, so there's not a whole lot of, you know, because I have a helix, I thought, well, I don't really want a whole lot of large or long rolling stock, auto racks. There may be some not spline cars, but center beam cars. There's really no open hopper use, other than I'm thinking about maybe a concrete factory somewhere on the layout, just because I like tanks, and I like tank cars and covered hoppers. So mainly you're going to see tank cars and covered hoppers. But there are no, like I said, there's no signals, there's no crossings, there's no town to model, and I'm only going to model what has to do with the railroad. So most of the warehouse buildings are just going to be a flat, kind of like this, you know, a 1-inch thick building, and we're going to look at the back of the building. So there's no ballast either. There's really not a main line. I mean, there is ballast, but there's no raised roadbed like a normal main line that would have, you know, 2 or 3 feet of sub-road bed that it's rolling on, because obviously there's going to be a lot more weight on that, and a lot more traffic. So this whole area is really going to be a little bit simple. I like the fact that there's no block detection. It's just me running this railroad, so really there's going to be one train, other than maybe some work in the Fulton yard with a switcher, and to move that stuff around. And we will see, these are the only 2 engines I have right now. They're Athearn GP38-2s. I got them undecorated so that I can come up with my own paint scheme. But the Fulton Industrial, I think they called it the Fulco, or the Fulton County Railroad at one time. It was built in the mid to late 60s, I have found out. It has a total of 55 miles of track. There's several characteristics that I like about this whole idea. Number one, there's only access into the rail system through the Fulton line. So there is no dispatcher, there are no signals, there are no towns, there are no, that I know of, there's no signal crossings. There's a large road called Fulton Industrial. How brilliant is that? It's a 4-lane, has a grass median that the actual railroad goes under in a tunnel underneath that. So there's no rail crossings at all, other than a few spots. I say a few spots, several spots within the industrial area. That's, you know, the speed limit's 25 miles an hour, and they're going to have crew on the train that's going to block traffic if they need to, or, you know, whatever. So, and the trains are going to be short too, so there's not a whole lot of, you know, because I have a helix, I thought, well, I don't really want a whole lot of large or long rolling stock auto racks. There may be some not spline cars, but center beam cars. There's really no open hopper use, other than I'm thinking about maybe a concrete factory somewhere on the layout, just because I like tanks, and I like tank cars and covered hoppers. So mainly you're going to see tank cars and covered hoppers. But there are no, like I said, there's no signals, there's no crossings, there's no town to model, and I'm only going to model what has to do with the railroad. So most of the warehouse buildings are just going to be a flat, kind of like this, you know, a 1-inch thick building, and we're going to look at the back of the building. So there's no ballast either. There's really not a main line. I mean, there is ballast, but there's no raised roadbed like a normal main line that would have, you know, 2 or 3 feet of sub-road bed that it's rolling on, because obviously there's going to be a lot more weight on that, and a lot more traffic. So this whole area is really going to be a little bit simple. I like the fact that there's no block detection. It's just me running this railroad, so really there's going to be one train, other than maybe some work in the Fulton yard with a switcher and to move that stuff around. And we will see, these are the only 2 engines I have right now. They're Athearn GP38-2s. I got them undecorated so that I can come up with my own paint scheme. And you've seen the logo on the video splash screen there, so that will be my logo. Hopefully I can either print that out or have it printed somehow or another and put it on the side of the locomotives. Omnitrax, I have found online some pictures of the locomotives they have. They're GP38-2s. But I'm not gonna. They're blue and gray. It's really just a bland color. I'm not saying that I won't maybe paint one of those in that paint scheme, and the other one maybe look a little newer, or patch them out or something like that. So I definitely don't want to do black, because to me, people that model Norfolk Southern, that's a black locomotive, and black, the color black hides detail. Unless you fade them out, so, or you weather them up and make them have that grayish look to them, then the detail kind of comes out. But we probably will see some CSX and some Norfolk Southern, because they'll come from staging, which will represent the big Inman Yard, which is in downtown Atlanta, kind of northwest of Atlanta. It is a huge yard. That is actually shared between Norfolk Southern and CSX, and then Norfolk Southern has their own yard that is right near where the TED, where the Atlanta Braves play. So they'll be coming out of staging, bringing freight and loads and trains up to the Fulton yard. Then they'll do a run around, pick up the empties, and then head back. So we'll probably represent that. That's the whole point of having staging, is so that you know, those trains could come in. We can have a rollover of box cars and or freight cars. But yeah, I just think it's a cool idea. The fact that it's just me going to operate the layout, and it's going to be a lot of fun building it. So, you know, there's going to be a couple large industries, hopefully on this side, since this is the longer wall. And I'll kind of get into some of the construction here in a little bit on what I've been doing and how I'm going about actually, you know, building the support for the railroad itself. All right, I think that we can see this here, hopefully. Okay. Now this is going to be staging, and what you're about to see is just all preliminary. I'll probably wind up at some point changing some of this. I mean, there's not going to be but 2 tracks here, and of course we got a loop here so that I don't really have to pick the trains up and turn them around or whatever. And I like continuous running trains as well, although I don't really have that worked into this design yet. I will at some point have a means to have just continuous run, albeit at a slower pace. But this is going to be, like I said, staging. This will be below the first level, and we'll come around, and then we'll the loop here will be underneath the helix. So I've drawn on here some elevations off the finished floor to give me some idea of where the shelving needed to be. So I've already kind of worked all that out. But this loop will be underneath the helix in the closet here. Of course, it'll go around the walls. These are 24-inch radius curves here, and then it will come in and it will go into the helix. All right, next here we have the first level. So, excuse me, we went into the helix over here, and then we're actually going to come up here. We'll just do one turn, and then we'll come up along this track here, and this is the Fulton yard that will be, and I hate that it goes around this corner, but when you think about it, you know, the corners are not really curves. We're just having to pack the railroad into the room, so really the curve is not there, so we're just assuming or pretending that it's going to be straight. But this is the Fulton yard, and we do have an incline or a grade upwards of about 2% around, and it's going to end at this point, just before the head into the yard. Now I realize this is the yard lead here coming in from Atlanta, but and it's a slight grade. I mean, this is 43.5 and that's 45, so that's 1.5 inches incline over a probably 7 foot length or something like that. The entire Fulco yard will be at one elevation of 45 inches above the finished floor. And then it will come around and come out of the yard. And again, we'll have a 5/8 of an inch increase in elevation, probably over a 40-inch length there. And in testing that I did and measurements and things of that nature, it looks like, now that I have a scale ruler, an HO scale ruler, it looks like that if you take a 4-foot level and you raise one end 1 inch, well, that represents, I believe it's 304 feet in HO scale is actually 345 feet, I believe. And over that length, we're going to increase in elevation by 87 inches. 1 inch in the real world is 87 scale inches. And if you do the math, you take the 87 and divide that by the 345, then multiply that by 100, it comes out to a little like 2.04 or something like that. And those numbers might not be correct. I'm just trying to pull that right off my memory bank there. But that's the calculation you would use. And it's this grade over here is only 2%. This is only 2%. And you know, like I said, these are going to be short trains, 9-10 cars at the most for one engine to pull. So no real big problem there. Excuse me, on the grades, I don't think. But once we come out of the Fulton yard, this will be a like I said, a little increase in elevation. We start getting into a little bit of industrial area here. This will be warehouses, and I'm not sure. You know, these tracks really cut between buildings, so I might bring the fascia up high on this side and put buildings on both sides of the railroad tracks, which I think would be kind of neat to be able to model against the wall. And over here, I mean, you're only talking a 4-inch tall building or something like that, and this lower level is well, this area right here is only going to be 45 inches off the floor, so I'm right at 6 feet. So for me, looking down on it, it's not really switching purposes. I don't think it would be that bad, to be honest with you. But once we leave this first little industrial area, there's a branch off that goes over here to another industrial area. Now, here's the cool thing that's going to happen. Because there's a helix in this closet and everything is having to crisscross one another, there's a difference in elevation on these two tracks here. This being the coming out of staging, inclining up. This is actually just going to be, you know, 3.5 inch clearance. That's why we're increasing elevation all the way around the first level, so that these two tracks here will cross one another. And then, of course, this track leads into the helix. I didn't finish what I was saying about on this other level here. This whole little industrial area here, in order to cover this inclining track, there is this siding and this siding, so there's going to be a building here and a building here, and I actually plan on running that to the wall, so this is not coming out of a tunnel, it's just actually underneath the building. And then on the end here, I'll probably just plant some trees as a backdrop, you know, to kind of hide that transition from coming out of the building, because it's not really coming out of the building, it's just appearing, and just have those trees there as a scenic break. All right, well, this is the upper level, and there's a lot on here that I have actually hidden or turned off when I printed this. The big tank industry is over in here. This will be a chemical, some sort of this is where all the tank cars will be located, mainly in this area over here. Again, warehouses mainly in this area. The concrete plant will probably be over in here, and it may be on the aisle side, if you will, of the tracks, and then warehouses against the wall. Most of this will probably be, and I did some tests with this whole level here is actually 60 inches off the floor. But we come out of the helix. This is, I think, going to be like 4.3 turns. There's 15 inches between the first level and this level. There's a 15-inch separation. So from rail to rail, 15 inches. But we come out of the helix here, as we're going clockwise, we'll be up. We can either go to the left or to the right, and of course this will go all the way around, and then we can loop back and go all the way back down, go through the Fulton yard, back down around the loop, back through staging, back up through the lower level, come back into the helix, come around, and we're back to the top. It's tight, like I said. This is 11.5 inches or 11.5 feet, and this is 9 feet. The helix is a 48-inch diameter. So at any rate, yeah, that's kind of the track plan. I think it works for me. You know, I think it's kind of a cool little design, the way it's laid out. All right, this is the construction method that I've chosen. Basically, all it is a shelf bracket, and then we have this is actually a 1x3 that's attached to that. It's got screws in the bottom. Now the cleat on the wall is because there's actually, let me step back here, there's actually two windows that I'm having to go across and span, I guess you would call it. So those 1x4s, those are 1x4s right here, and they're actually spanning the window there. But the cleats on the wall, these little cleats here, are for the backdrop, and the backdrop will be tempered masonite, probably 1/8 inch, 3/16, something like that. And I'm going to do square corners. I'm not going to worry about you know, rounding the corners. I may over here, because this is where the Fulton yard is going to be, right in along through here. And then of course I've got to do something and span the door. That door is going to have to come down, and a bifold door that will go and fold out into the hallway. That'll have to be changed out. That's the helix template that I have made up. That's a big boy. It's a lot bigger than I thought it was going to be. And I have my workbench. But then we're having we're actually going to put 1-inch foam. We'll glue this down to the with construction adhesive for projects. We'll glue that down to the 1x3s. We'll glue them here, and then of course that gives us an attachment point for the back for the backdrop. Now there will be another bracket that will go here. These will be larger brackets on the top. They'll stick out a little bit farther. That's my workbench. Like I said, we'll do some electronics, whatnot. I have a function generator and an oscilloscope. But the foam, and I got this idea. I was watching a YouTube video, and a guy. It was actually I think it was a club layout. Actually, it was a very large layout. It may have been in someone's basement. Anyways, they were doing a cab ride, so they were pushing the camera around on the car, and they went underneath the one of the, like on a lower level, and clearly above you could see that they had used the same setup. Now I saw that, and you know, that's a good idea. But I thought it's cheap. The brackets are only like $1.96 at Lowe's, and these particular ones are 11.5 by 9.5, I believe. And I guarantee you could probably put a good 25 pounds on each one of those brackets, and you would have no problem. The only thing I worry about is maybe the foam sagging between, but that's why I put, you know, I was going to use 1x4s, and I forgot that I had cut these pieces out before to use them instead of these brackets, and so they're a little bit wider, so that kind of shortens up this distance between the two brackets. So, all right, well, that's it. You know, as normal, subscribe. You know, I've probably watched most of you guys' videos. I enjoyed the live show the other night. It was rather late because I'm on the East Coast. I think I finally said, man, I got to go to bed. It was 1:35 or so, and Mike and those guys were going strong. So enjoyed that very much. You know, Greg with Fish Plate Films he was if you didn't see that, it was funny. He got to introduce the Birdwood subdivision, and I thought that was pretty funny. So everybody that was on the panel, y'all did a great job. I enjoyed it. Gino, you don't live too far from me over in Alabama, and hopefully we'll run into one another. I enjoy your your builds, just put that camera out and I'll sit and watch it for hours, bud. Well, in this video, we're going to discuss a few characteristics about the Fulton line. It is an industrial line that was built in the late, this is hard to do, man,